Cotton candy shouldn't contain a human body. But in Killer Klowns From Outer Space, that's exactly what happens. And if you grew up renting horror films on VHS, this horror movie probably lives in your brain forever. Back in the late 80s, my brother and I were standing in a video rental shop, staring at a VHS cover that looked like pure magic. Bright colours, creepy clown faces, and a title that sounded absolutely ridiculous. We weren't technically old enough to rent it, but our granddad always helped us with that little problem. And what we brought home that night wasn't just a weird horror comedy, it was one of the strangest, funniest, and quietly most terrifying films I had ever seen. Even now, decades later, it's still one of my favourite horror movies ever made. And today, we're opening the circus tent to talk about why this bizarre little 1988 cult horror film has lived rent-free in my brain ever since. That's Killer Klowns From Outer Space, the strangest horror film the 1980s ever made. Not the scariest, not the most disturbing, the strangest. And I mean that as the highest possible compliment. If you've never seen the movie, the premise is wonderfully ridiculous. A glowing meteor crashes just outside a small American town.
Wow, check that out!
Two teenagers go to investigate and discover the meteor is actually a giant circus tent. Inside it, aliens, but not the kind with grey skin and big black eyes. These aliens look like clowns, grotesque, rubber-faced circus monsters with painted smiles and rows of sharp teeth. And they're not here to entertain anyone, they're here to harvest humans. The film was created by the Chiodo brothers, who had spent years building creature effects before finally making their own movie in 1988. You can feel that love for practical effects in every scene. Because the clowns don't just look strange, they behave in ways that are both hilarious and unsettling. They shoot popcorn guns, they transform simple circus tricks into bizarre weapons, but the thing that stuck in my head the most as a kid was the cotton candy cocoons. The clowns seal their victims in giant pink cotton candy sacks, hang them up like meat in a freezer, and later come back to drink the blood through crazy curly straws. It sounds ridiculous when you describe it, but watching it as a kid, it was deeply disturbing. That horrible slurping noise when the clown drinks from the straw. It felt like something you weren't meant to see, and then the movie gets even stranger. There's a moment that might be the most wonderfully bizarre scene in the entire film. A clown walks up to a bus stop and starts making shadow puppets with its hands. At first, it looks harmless. Little shapes dancing across the wall, like something you'd do as a kid with a torch.
Quack.
But the shapes start getting bigger, stranger, until suddenly the shadow puppet becomes a giant dinosaur, and somehow actually eats the people standing in front of it.
Holy shit!
It's one of those moments where you sit there thinking, did that just really happen? But it perfectly captures the imagination behind this movie. The clowns don't just kill people, they do it in ways that feel like twisted circus tricks. Every attack feels like a warped carnival act.
What are you going to do with those pies, boys?
And then there's one moment that genuinely unsettled me. Earlier in the film, Mooney delivers this tough guy line.
But you're not gonna make a dummy out of me.
And then pays it off later in the creepiest way possible. When one of the clowns walks into the station, we realise Mooney is already dead. The clown is standing behind the desk, using his body like a puppet, his lifeless face staring forward. It's darkly funny, but also deeply creepy, because for a moment, the film stops feeling silly.
All we want to do is kill you.
The sound of squelching as its hand is removed from deep inside his body. That moment stuck with me as a kid. It's the perfect example of what this movie does so well. It tricks you into laughing and then suddenly reminds you the clowns are actually monsters. 3 moments that exist nowhere else in 1980s horror, because no other film that decade was building this particular kind of logic. where the horror and the absurdity aren't fighting each other, they're the same thing. And here's the strange thing, this movie probably shouldn't have worked at all. To really understand why it stands out, you have to remember the horror world it arrived in. The late 80s were dominated by slasher movies. Every cinema and video shop was filled with masked killers and rising body counts. You had films like Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween spawning sequel after sequel. Horror was darker, more violent, and usually very serious. So when this bizarre clown invasion movie arrived in 1988, it felt completely different. Instead of a masked killer with a knife, the villains were alien circus monsters. Instead of gloomy woods and abandoned houses, you had bright carnival colours and popcorn guns. It was horror filtered through the imagination of old sci-fi monster movies, and that was very deliberate. The Chiodo brothers grew up loving the strange creature features of the 1950s. Films where something bizarre crashes into a small American town and chaos follows. Movies like The Blob or The Day the Earth Stood Still. A single idea pushed as far as it could go. Those movies were imaginative, sometimes a little goofy, but unforgettable. This film is basically a love letter to that era. You've got the small town of Crescent Cove, teenagers discovering something strange in the woods, authorities refusing to believe them, and a completely absurd alien threat. And that idea alone makes the whole film work, because clowns already sit in a strange place in our minds. They're meant to be funny, but they're also a little unsettling. This movie takes that uncomfortable feeling and pushes it straight into horror, which is probably why so many people who watched it as kids never forgot it. Another thing that burned itself into my brain was the soundtrack. John Massari's score fits the film perfectly. All warped carnival energy, pulsing synths, and offbeat menace. It matches the movie's colourful visuals while reinforcing that strange balance between fun, parody, and genuine unease. The theme song by the Dickies is pure 80s chaos. Looking back now, another reason the film still holds up is the practical effects. There's no CGI here, everything is real. Real suits, real masks, real creature effects. Each clown was played by an actor inside these massive costumes, which means every clown has its own strange personality. Shorty, for example, looks like a tiny, angry clown child and somehow manages to be both hilarious and genuinely creepy at the same time.
Knock my block off.
And yes, I love this movie so much that I actually own a replica mask of Shorty, which probably says a lot about me, but my connection to this film goes way beyond just liking it. Over the years, it's become one of those movies I've slowly collected in every format I could find. UK VHS, US VHS, Japanese VHS, Polish, German, French, Swedish, Turkish, Australian, Spanish Betamax, DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K. I even managed to get hold of the original UK rental poster, and if that wasn't enough, there's also a custom-made wooden cotton candy cocoon made by my brother as a present, which is either really cool or slightly worrying, probably both. At this point, it's less of a collection and more like a small clown archive. But maybe the real reason this movie still means so much to me is the way I first discovered it. Back then, movies didn't find you through a streaming algorithm. You found them by accident, on a dusty shelf with a weird VHS cover staring back at you. Horror waited for you in rental shops, rows and rows of strange boxes, and sometimes a film would grab you before you even knew what it was. That's exactly what happened with this one. The cover art was impossible to ignore. It looked less like a movie and more like some kind of forbidden carnival. My brother and I didn't know anything about the story. We didn't know who made it. All we knew was we had to see it. And thanks to our granddad helping us rent it, that strange VHS tape came home with us. There's something magical about that moment, sliding the cassette into the video player, the tape whirring to life. And suddenly, you're inside this bizarre world of alien clowns, cotton candy cocoons, and twisted circus laughter. Films discovered like that hit a little differently. They feel personal, like you found them yourself. And that's probably why some movies never leave you. They're not just films, they're memories. A video shop, a strange VHS cover, a late night watching something you probably shouldn't have been watching. And somewhere in that moment, a weird little cult horror movie becomes part of your life. For me, this is one of those films. And I'm curious about something. If you've ever seen Killer Klowns From Outer Space, what scene stuck with you the most? The cotton candy cocoons, the shadow puppet dinosaur, or the moment Officer Mooney becomes a ventriloquist dummy? Because for a lot of people, once you see this movie, you never really forget it. And decades later, I'm still riding the nightmare merry-go-round, and those clowns are still living rent-free in my head. If you want another trip down this particular rabbit hole, I did the same thing to another 1988 cult classic. The Blob is waiting for you. Till next time, Crypt dwellers, keep on digging.